For my presentation, I chose to focus on vocabulary because I think vocabulary is the key to reading comprehension. Although other factors are important as well, such as grammar and sentence structure, I think that many of my students struggle with knowing academic vocabulary when they're reading, and also when it comes to things such as testing for science and even for math. So for me, this is one of the most important components of reading. I also chose to focus on ELL students and students who weren't read to as children, because I think this makes a big difference, and the involvement at home is a huge factor in their reading comprehension skills and their vocabulary skills. So I drew a student that's saying como because he doesn't understand what's being read. A big challenge for ELL students specifically are idioms or expressions, because they don't have a literal meaning. It's a figurative meaning, and when they try to translate it, this is what it looks like in their mind. We could say, oh my gosh, it's raining cats and dogs. And they look at us like we're crazy, and they see an image of cats and dogs falling from the sky. So I think that this is particularly difficult for them and for students who aren't ELL, because they have to interpret it and they have to know the expression in order to understand what it means. They can't figure it out through context clues. As I said earlier, I think that vocabulary is the root of comprehension. I've spent a lot of time with my students in the morning during intervention time using root words and setting up a vocabulary dictionary. So they have root words, they have prefixes, and they have suffixes. And I use etymology to help them make connections to their native language if they speak Creole or French or Spanish or Portuguese or any of the Latin languages. And this has really helped them group the vocabulary and help them better understand what it means and where it's coming from. And they've been able to find cognates in their native language, which has helped them remember it as well. According to a study conducted by the National Assessment of Educational Process, there's a strong correlation between vocabulary scores and comprehension. So as I said earlier, this is something that's been proven, and strong vocabulary is the key to success and the key to reading comprehension. So we were asked to compare Garrett to the average student in our class. I thought that Garrett would be reading would be in a third grade class. So you can see from the double bubble map that what the students have in common is that they're all in third grade. Garrett is reading at an F&P level K, while most students in the third grade should be reading between an N and by the end of the year, P. Garrett's SRI, or his Lexile level, which is primarily based on vocabulary, was at a 400, while students in third grade should range from 500 to 800. His fluency level is 58 words per minute, where halfway through the year, students in third grade should be able to read 70 to 120 words per minute. And his vocabulary was a 4 out of 10 for comprehension on academic text. And I put an average of a 70% for a third grade classroom. We can see that Garrett is below average in the classroom, and it's important to monitor him. And eventually, if he doesn't improve, he would need an SSP or an IEP so that he could receive documented interventions through Data Warehouse. The interventions that I thought would be best for Garrett to improve his vocabulary are context clues using etymology and figurative language. I think in using context clues, this is a huge skill for students, and I think it comes down to breaking down the different ways that you can see context clues. For example, they might use it as a definition. They might use a synonym using the word or. And I think helping them recognize the context clues in the text and helping them figure that out is the best way to get them to understand a reading rather than having to look up all the different words that they don't know. I spoke a little bit about etymology before. I think that it's very important to teach word networks. So combining words and teaching parts of speech, like progress, progress, progression. So teaching all of those words together in the different forms that the students will see them in. And also teaching the students about prefixes and suffixes and roots and how to make sense and compartmentalize language. I also spoke a little bit about figurative language, and I think that this is really important because we see this in our literature standards all the time. Using similes and using metaphors, and sometimes that's over the student's head and they need a picture and they need to understand, and that needs to be explicitly explained to them. How we can use interventions most efficiently is through small group instruction and frequent monitoring and keeping track of the student's progress. So with Garrett, what I would do is I would have small group instruction. So I would put him in a group for guided reading that is a lower Lexile level. So between 400 and 500, for example, for the third grade. And I would monitor his progress, and we would have a specific target for that day, such as context clues, and I would help those students during that time use context clues. I think another good way would be to have him take frequent SRI tests to measure his Lexile level and to closely monitor that and make sure that he's making improvements. He could also keep a vocabulary notebook, and he could use vocabulary instruction on iReady, which is also easily monitored by the teacher because it's done for you through the platform, and you can see the quizzes that he's passed and he's failed in that specific domain. Thank you for watching.